Let's get right into it. Number 10. Vomitoriums weren't for vomiting. You've probably heard ancient Romans had special rooms called vomitoriums to throw up during feasts so they could keep eating. That's completely wrong. Vomitoriums were actually hallways in Roman theaters and stadiums, like the tunnels you use to get to your seat at a modern game. The Romans designed these passages so well that a stadium could empty out in minutes. The name comes from the Latin word vomere, which means to spew forth, because these tunnels spewed forth crowds of people, not food. Thousands of Romans streaming out of the Colosseum after a gladiator match. That's what vomitoriums were for. Crowd control. But writers in the 1800s saw the word sounded like vomit and assumed Romans used them for puking during feasts. And a false story was born, turning ancient Rome into a bulimia festival in people's minds. The reality is less gross and actually pretty clever. Roman engineers designed these passages so well, we still use similar designs in modern stadiums. Number 9. George Washington's wooden teeth. George Washington didn't have wooden teeth. His dentures were made with gold wire, ivory from elephants and hippos, and actual human teeth. He also had horse and cow teeth mixed in. Historical records show he bought human teeth from African Americans. These dentures were held together with gold springs and wires. They were miserable to wear, making his lips bulge out, causing constant pain. You can see it in his portraits. That grumpy look is partly because his mouth was in pain. The ivory parts stained easily, turning brownish, likely starting the wooden teeth myth. Washington had to constantly clean them with wax, chalk, and scrub them with pine sticks. One French dentist even left a hole in the dentures for Washington's last remaining real tooth. The guy on the dollar bill was basically wearing a collection of borrowed body parts in his mouth. Number 8. Pirates rarely use the plank. That dramatic movie scene where pirates make victims walk the plank is mostly fiction. Real pirates didn't have time for that kind of theater. They were more direct. Just grab the person and throw them overboard. If pirates wanted someone to suffer, they used marooning. Imagine being dropped on a tiny deserted island with only a pistol and one bullet. That bullet wasn't for hunting. It was offered as a grim escape from the psychological torture of isolation ahead. Sometimes pirates did something called keel hauling. They'd tie you up and drag you under the ship. The sharp barnacles covering the ship's bottom would tear you apart. Most people didn't survive keel hauling. Hollywood loves the plank scene because it's dramatic. But in reality, pirates preferred quick and brutal solutions. Number 7. Walt Disney wasn't frozen. You've probably heard Walt Disney is chilling somewhere in a high-tech freezer, waiting to be thawed out. But Walt was actually cremated. His body was taken to Forest Lawn Cemetery 2 days after he died in 1966. He was cremated right there, and his ashes were put in a simple container. The freezing story started right after his death. Tabloid reporters claimed they saw his body in a cryogenic device. The timing was perfect for this rumor. The 1960s were obsessed with the future and the idea of freezing people. Walt Disney himself was obsessed with the future. He built Epcot as his vision of a futuristic utopia. So when people heard Walt Disney might be frozen, it seemed believable. Rumors claimed Disney's frozen body was hidden underneath rides at Disneyland. Some say he's hidden beneath the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. His daughter even had to publicly state they didn't freeze him. But people still believe the freezing story. Walt was actually fighting lung cancer from heavy smoking when he died. He barely had time to say goodbye, let alone arrange cryopreservation. The man who spent his life creating magical stories ended up becoming part of a myth himself. Number 6. Ninjas weren't always in black pajamas. Every ninja movie shows these guys running around in black pajamas. That's not historically accurate. Real ninjas were masters of disguise. They didn't stick to one outfit. They dressed up as whatever helped them blend in. The black pajama idea actually came from kabuki theater. Stagehands wore all black so the audience pretended they couldn't see them moving props. Then a playwright made one of these invisible stagehands turn out to be a ninja, and the black ninja outfit was born. In reality, ninjas were more likely to be wearing dark blue at night, because dark blue actually blends better with darkness than black. Black creates a noticeable silhouette, while dark blue just disappears. And in winter, they'd wear white to match the snow. They dressed as merchants, farmers, monks, anyone who wouldn't draw attention. If you saw a real ninja in feudal Japan, you probably wouldn't even know it. The real ninjas were the ones dressed as peasants, waiting for the perfect moment. Number 5. The Great Wall isn't visible from the moon. Everyone says you can see the Great Wall of China from the moon. Turns out, that's completely false. This myth started way back in 1938, when a writer claimed the Great Wall was the only man-made thing visible from the moon. He wrote this before anyone had actually been to the moon. The wall is only about 30 feet wide in most places. Trying to spot something that narrow from 238 to 900 miles away is impossible. That's like trying to spot a single human hair from a mile away. Plus, it's built using local materials, so it blends in with the surrounding landscape from above. Actual astronauts have confirmed this. Neil Armstrong himself couldn't spot it, even though he was looking for it. Other astronauts have tried too. All they see is Earth looking like a beautiful marble, blue oceans, white clouds, and brown land. No walls in sight. Number 4. Gladiators didn't always fight to the end. Gladiators didn't fight to the death every time they stepped into the arena. They were more like the NFL players of ancient Rome, highly trained professionals who cost a fortune to maintain. Gladiator owners spent tons of money training them. They had special schools, trainers, and often better health care than most Romans. Killing a valuable gladiator after one loss just didn't make sense financially. The fights even had referees who could stop the match if it got too intense. Sometimes both fighters walked away if the crowd enjoyed the performance. 2 gladiators, Priscus and Verus, fought so impressively, the Emperor Titus declared them both winners. He granted them freedom with a wooden sword each. Most gladiator fights were about skill and spectacle, not just death. The really brutal stuff, like fighting lions or being torn apart by bears, was saved for actual criminals. Real gladiators were too expensive to waste. Number 3. Paul Revere didn't shout, "The British are coming." Paul Revere never actually shouted the famous line, "The British are coming." His midnight ride was supposed to be sneaky, warning people while avoiding enemy patrols. Shouting would have been a terrible move. What he actually said was much quieter. "The regulars are coming out." Regulars was the term for professional British soldiers. He also didn't yell, "The British are coming," because most colonists still considered themselves British at the time. It would be like yelling, "The Americans are coming," today. Revere had to dodge British patrols, cross rivers in the dark, and navigate back roads without getting caught. He went house to house, quietly knocking on doors and whispering his warning. He was part of a larger warning system using church bells, gunshots, and whispered messages. He even got caught by a British patrol at one point, but managed to talk his way out of it. The famous quote, "The British are coming," comes from Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. He wrote a dramatic poem about the ride in 1860, nearly 100 years later. He turned Revere's sneaky spy mission into something loud and obvious. Number 2, Einstein aced math class. That story about Einstein failing math class your teachers tell is a myth. Einstein was actually a math genius from day one, getting top marks. His school reports show he was crushing it in math class. This myth probably started because people got confused about the German grading system. In German schools back then, 1 was the highest grade and 6 was the lowest. So when people saw Einstein's report cards with all these 1s, they thought he was failing. Or maybe people just loved the idea of a genius starting out as an underdog. Einstein actually struggled with languages and writing, but he was so good at math that by age 12, he was teaching himself algebra and geometry. The guy who supposedly failed math went on to create equations that changed how we see the universe. Saying Einstein failed math is as wrong as saying Newton discovered gravity because an apple knocked him out. This myth got so popular that Einstein himself had to deny it. Number 1. Columbus didn't discover America. The idea that Columbus discovered America isn't accurate. First off, millions of people were already living there. These were massive civilizations with cities bigger than London at the time. The Aztecs built massive pyramids. The Mayans invented a super accurate calendar. The Incas built an empire spanning 2,500 miles without wheels. Columbus wasn't even the first European to reach America. A Viking named Leif Erikson arrived about 500 years earlier, around 1000 AD. The Vikings even built a settlement in what's now Canada. It's been found, and it's called L'Anse aux Meadows. When Columbus did arrive, he was so lost he thought he was in India. He landed in the Bahamas, looked around, and declared he was in Asia. That's why he called the native people Indians. That name stuck for centuries because one guy was terrible at geography. Even after 4 trips to the Americas, Columbus died still believing he had reached Asia. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.